Hello. The lighting is not very great right now, but I wanted to start this video out because it is the first video that we're doing for the book club reads that I am in, or the book clubs that I'm in. We're doing January, and this time around it's going to be the booktube, which we are reading Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll, and then also for the Ravished by Romance book club, we're reading God of Fury. Can't remember who the author is at the time, but I know it's a male romance. I'm super excited about all of these books, and I plan on filling you in as I read. I just ordered Bright Young Women, or I got it on my Kindle, but I also have an audiobook on Scribd as well, and I'm waiting on that one to get approved on the 22nd, since I've already read my limit for January evidently. But I am going to start on God of Fury first because I want to read Bright Young Women and listen to it at the same time, because I feel like that's going to be the way to read that book, because it sounds kind of confusing. But yeah, so God of Fury is the Ravished by Romance book club pick for January, and I've heard that it's really good. Never read from this author before, so it shall be a adventure. We are also supposed to have snow, so maybe we'll see some snow in this video, but otherwise you're just going to be hanging out with me while I read. And again, I'm starting with God of Fury for this video. Hopefully you enjoy it, and yeah, so let's get started. So it did snow. This is what a snow where I live looks like. But you hear that? The little pellets hitting? That's sleet. So what it does here is it sleets, then it snows, then it sleets, then it snows, then it sleets, then it snows. So that's why our entire state shuts down. But yeah. There's the roofs. But yep, so it did snow, yay! Okay, I'm going back inside now. Cold. I wanted to fill you in on this video and let you know that I am 50% into both of the books. I got to 50% of God of Fury, was it yesterday? Maybe the day before yesterday. And this one is, I don't know how much I really am enjoying this book. Not that I'm not, okay. I don't like Nikolai at all. I have learned more about his wiener than I have about his own personality, because that's all he talks about. And then we have Brandon. I don't know how much I really like Brandon either, just by the way that he is treating Nikolai, but then Nikolai is not treating Brandon any better. They just have a really weird relationship. Brandon was not attracted to men before Nikolai, so he's going through a lot of like self-doubt. He's also trying to figure out his sexuality. He doesn't want people to know that him and Nikolai have a thing going on either. Nikolai was very forceful trying to get with Brandon, and even though Brandon was telling him that he was straight and that he was not interested, Nikolai kept pushing and pushing and pushing, because Nikolai's agenda was to like break him, basically. And I don't like that. You know, if you haven't watched my videos before, consent is a really big thing to me. So this book is really riding on that consent, on that consent thing. Now that we're 50% in, consent is not really that big of an issue, but at the very beginning it was, and I don't like that. And even the author's note at the very beginning said it's not a conventional romance either. So knowing that going into it is pretty important, because you don't get that romantic feel at all from them. But now that they have started to get to know each other and they are figuring each other out, there are some sweeter scenes going on too, where Nikolai is not as brash and Brandon is starting to feel more comfortable in his own skin. So there are some like positives to this book, but I can tell that this is not going to be a 5-star for me, and I don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series at all. I know this is book number 5. You can read it as a standalone, But even meeting some of the other characters, I'm not really interested in it. Plus, going into this, I knew that it was a college romance. So Nikolai's only 19, and you can really tell it by his character. The author's doing a good job about that, because he's very immature and he's very angry, and he's just all of these things. And like I said, you know more about his lower region than you know about him. He's supposed to be like this big buff guy who beats everyone up and all this stuff, but you only get, so far I've only seen one scene, well technically two, the very beginning and the fight scene sort of near the middle, but where he's actually like super brutal. And then Brandon, he's got a lot of demons, that he's trying to figure out. Plus he's trying to figure out his sexuality as well, so he's having a little bit of a hard time. But I don't like that Brandon is wanting to hide the relationship. Just by the way, he is very attracted to Nikolai, but you know, he's supposed to be straight and he's having a really hard time with that. But the way that he is just dragging Nikolai along, I don't like that. But then again, I have those wishy-washy feelings with Nikolai, because Nikolai knew that Brandon was straight at the very beginning, and that was his whole goal, was to break Brandon. So I don't know. We'll see how the rest of the book goes. And it's very, very long. I didn't realize it was over 500 pages long. So switching gears, Bright Young Women. I didn't realize that this was it's not really a retelling, but it's telling from the perspective of the victims and the women from Ted Bundy. I didn't realize that. But I do like the way that the author is telling the story. We have Pamela and we also have Ruth. Pamela was one of the girls in the sorority house in Tallahassee, Florida, where Ted Bundy murdered sorority sisters. I don't know if you don't know the whole story. Ted Bundy murdered sorority sisters and attacked sorority sisters. And Pamela was one of the survivors. Her best friend ended up dying. So she is telling her story based on how everything has went for her. And then we also have Ruth's perspective. And Ruth's perspective, Ruth was one of the women that Ted Bundy actually murdered. So you know that going into it. And then we have this chick named Tina, who was Ruth's best friend. And Pamela and Tina meet because Ruth was killed 4 years before the sorority sisters were killed. So, and harmed. So it's being told in a really cool way, even though it's fiction. It has a lot of actual real things that happened. So the author has done their research, and I'm enjoying the book, the way that it's being told. And it's just very interesting, the perspectives of the women. And I don't know if this is true or not, but this is just kind of like the vibe that I'm getting, that the author, Jessica Knoll, actually like went in and read witness statements from these women and actually got to know these women like on a deeper personal level just by researching their stories, because it feels so real. And when I'm going through it, I'm actually doing my own research, and it's like pretty much spot on how these characters are. Pamela's character is very dull, but you learn why she is a dull character. Ruth wasn't a very good person. She's got a lot of things going on with her too. But Tina is just like wild. But anyways, yeah, you get to really know the girls of the sorority house. You get to really know the girls on a personal level, and it's very impactful. So I'm enjoying it so far. I've been flying through it. I started it last night and I'm already at 50%. So far it's a yes. The men in Bright Young Women are insufferable though. Like the police over the whole investigation. Obviously Ted Bundy, an insufferable human being. And the other male characters in here, no bueno. I'm not liking them at all. The women in here are up here. The men in this book are way down here. So just some thoughts on that long-winded note. We have been iced in the house for 5 days now. The snow that I showed you turned into ice, and it thawed a little bit yesterday, but then the temperatures dropped back down into the 20s, so everything refroze. Tomorrow, hopefully, we might get to go outside a little bit. Chris and Charles have been going outside, but Lila and I have not, because we don't like cold weather, and I don't need to be walking on ice right now where I'm 9 months pregnant. So yeah, that's just updates. We're about to eat, and then I'm going to continue reading, and then I will let you know, update you when I get to where I get in these books, whichever one I finish first. So, washed my hair today too. High five. Hello. So I'm here to fill you in on this video and let you know that I finished Bright Young Women, and I'm giving it 3.5 stars. It wasn't a bad book by any means. It was actually I think it was a very good book in a way, and that it explained and gave the victims of Ted Bundy a voice. With that being said, I also think that the author's way of writing some of the characters in this book were very disjointed. I had somewhat of a hard time keeping up with some of the structure of like the thoughts of Ruth specifically, because in her chapters they jumped around a lot. Like her whole thoughts, and then the storytelling would jump around. The farther it got in the book, like the last third, not half, but third of the book, you could tell that it was just like the author was just like trying to get through the book and trying to end the book, and it just felt kind of just disjointed at times. Also, as the book continued on, it kind of fell flat, and I started to get bored because it was a slower book, but it got even slower at the end. So I was just kind of like, okay, I'm ready to get this over with. So I sped through it, and you know, I read it and all that kind of stuff. Not saying that this book is boring or anything like that, because I believe that it is a very good book, and it does give the victims a voice, like I said. But there was just some things that I found a little meh about it along the way, and it's Ted Bundy. There's not much else you can say. He's a horrible human, and we realize that he's a horrible human in this book even more, you know. But I do think that the author did a good job at overall researching, but I did realize too, a lot of the names were changed, so I kind of felt like that took away from the victims as well. But then again, it also gave them more of a voice. I don't really know. I have mixed thoughts about that too, because it is fiction, but you know who the killer is just based on the events and the dates that the author put into this book. So not horrible by any means, but just kind of one of those books, you know. And then I'm like 75% into God of Fury. I'm having a hard time getting through this book just because of the characters in here. I'm having a hard time reading from Brandon's perspective, because he is very depressed, and there's self-harm in here. It's on page. He's also very wishy-washy, and it's 75% into it, and it's the same stuff happening back and forth, getting together, breaking up, getting together, breaking up. Brandon's finally figuring out like what he wants, if he wants to be with Nikolai or not. Nikolai's always angry, and it's just like very repetitive. Very, very repetitive. This book is way too long. I'm gonna finish it because I'm 75% in, but it's just way too long. It's way too long, and I don't think it's gonna be above a 3-star for me, honestly. And it makes me sad because I was really excited about this book. And yeah, so, but I will fill you in once, you know, get farther into it. Alright, so I ended up finishing God of Fury. And okay, I'll come look at your fish in a second. I'll be in there in a second. But, oh, are you gonna bring it to me? Did you put the fish together?
Yeah.
That's cool. You're gonna work on the anglerfish now? What are you gonna name it?
I'm gonna name him Fishy.
Fishy?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can take care of Fishy.
I'll take care of Fishy for you. I got a fish. This is the fish. Anyways, so I finished God of Fury, and I have a love-hate relationship with this book. The ending of the book was honestly 5 stars for me, like after you get past all of the other stuff. But I don't know if I'm going to give this book a 2.5 or a 3, because the beginning of this book was a struggle for me. It took forever to get into it. This book is way too long, and it's almost 600 pages long. And you don't, honestly, for this kind of romance, you don't need that long of a book. But there was also some borderline consent issues in here for me too. And if you have watched my channel for a while, or if you don't know, consent is really big for me. And the way that Nico pushed himself onto Brandon for the majority of the first part of the book, I did not like whatsoever. But it ended up in HEA at the very end, because Brandon figured out that, you know, he was really into Nico and stuff. But the way that it got handled to get there, did not like. I also did not like the overall, wouldn't say, there's just a lot of physical aggression in here, because Nico is a very aggressive person. And there were some things in here that he did to Brandon that I did not like whatsoever. Like, I do not like physical violence in my romances. Even if they are men, I do not like that. I don't care. There should never be any physical violence in a romance, personally, for me. Maybe different for other people, because it did show like the development of their relationship, and it showed Brandon really did help Nico figure out, like, calm down and not be so aggressive. But just the way that it was handled in the beginning, I did not agree with whatsoever. I also didn't really like the stalkery aspect of this book either. It kind of had the Haunting Adeline vibes, but it was just, Brandon didn't like it. Whereas in Haunting Adeline, she actually liked it. Anyways, I don't know why I'm talking about Haunting Adeline, but I don't know. I just have a love-hate relationship with this book. I'm still going back between 2.5 to 3 stars. I know that people absolutely love this book, so it is probably a me thing and not a book thing by any means. I also had a little bit of an issue with the author's writing style. It was slow at times, but then it sped up, and then it was slow at times and it sped up, and then we got chapters that were very similar in the way that Brandon and Nico would break up, then they'd get back together, and they'd break up, then they'd get back together. And I can't, that's one thing in my romances that gets on my nerves, like, completely. But in the end, it was the ending of this book, like probably the last 150 pages of this book was very sweet, and I liked how their romance developed. It was very, very sweet, but getting there, it was rough. And yeah, I know that I'm in the minority here with this book, because everybody loves it. But really, when I was reading through a lot of the other reviews that didn't like this book, they were some of the same issues that I had it. But I know that they're like, this is like a, yes, people love it. And like I said, at the end, I really did enjoy them together for the most part. They really helped each other figure out and to work through their issues. Brandon had a lot of issues, and when we found out why he has all those issues, and just like how he hates himself and stuff like that, it was understandable, but it took a long time to get there. It took a really, really long time to get there. There is self-harm on pages, which was really hard to read. Brandon's chapters to me were very hard to read because he just hated himself so much. But then Nico really helped him figure out a way to love himself too. And then Brandon, like I said, helped Nico calm down and not be so like all the time. Really do think Nico is he needs some help, and Brandon needs some help, and then they got help at the end, and that was really sweet. But I think now that I'm talking through it, thinking more of like a 3-star, because it wasn't like a horrible book by any means, but it was just rough getting into it for me at the very beginning. But yeah, so just wanted to fill you in on that. I'm gonna watch the live show. I watched the live show for Bright Young Women last night, and I really enjoyed the conversation. I really enjoyed how, like, the feminist aspect of Bright Young Women, but like I told you, there was just some writing issues, and there were some things that caught me off guard. And knowing so much about the Ted Bundy case, it was kind of weird to me to read a fictionalized version of it. But not that Jessica Knoll didn't do a fabulous job of giving the women a voice, and that was the whole point of that book. But there were just some technical things that I didn't like about that book too. So, but overall, I enjoyed this reading vlog. I know that we didn't do a whole lot in here, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the discussions that are in here. And I will see you in February, because there are some good books that are coming up. We'll be reading 3 books in February for the book clubs that I am in. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you read these books, if you plan on reading these books, discussion wise, all that stuff, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.